Hello, my name is Quinn Delaney, and I'm the Bassoon Fellow of the Civic Orchestra of Chicago, and I'm here today to talk about some practice tips. To start, I would like to talk about how to set up a productive practice session. Something that's very important for me is making sure that I am not on my phone. If I am going to use it, it's in airplane mode. If you need it for a tuner or a metronome, that's perfectly fine, but checking your messages in Facebook is extremely distracting, and I think you're shooting yourself in the foot. And something else that's very important is making sure that I have a very comfortable reed. If I'm working on reeds, of course, that's a completely other story. But if I'm practicing and really working on music, I always make sure that I have something that I know is responsive and is going to play and is in tune enough that I can get by. And if the tone isn't great and there's imperfections that matter minimally, then that's fine, as long as you can focus on the music that you're making. And one really great way to do that is by the warm-up that I do, which is a bit off the beaten path, and I've been doing this for some time now, and I think it's extremely helpful for me, and it's sort of an anti-warm-up in some ways. I always make sure that first thing in the morning, every day, or whatever time I'm practicing, I start with something technically challenging, or I start by just playing music right off the bat, instead of just checking to see if my instrument works or checking to see what my reed's doing. The very first note of the day, I make sure that I'm playing music. And I think that that is extremely helpful to really get your ears working and activate that part of your brain, and it helps so that you're not so distracted from everything that's happening down here, which of course is very complicated. But what you're really trying to do is playing music. Of course, some of the music that you're going to play is very technically challenging, and an important way to make sure that you are ready to tackle anything that you might face is by working on technique and making sure that the technical bar that you have is high enough to tackle whatever challenges you have. And one great way of doing that for me is working on things like this. That is an old jazz standard by Charlie Parker called Donna Lee, and I also really love playing jazz, which I'm going to talk about at the end, but that is so extremely challenging on the bassoon, and as is a lot of different jazz music, and that's, for me, has been one of the best ways of just improving my technique and my musicianship to make sure that whatever classical music I'm practicing, I have always played something extremely difficult and awkward and unfamiliar, and I think that really helps just boost everything in your playing. And of course, eventually when you're playing classical music, you do have to just sit down and make things even and really focus on that kind of style. And a great way to do that is practicing with different types of rhythms, especially for technical excerpts. And a great excerpt to demonstrate that is the Overture to the Marriage of Figaro. And one way I might practice that is like this. And with different rhythms, but still slowly. Of course, course, in context, you'll be playing that much faster and much softer. But when you're just working on your finger technique and you're practicing it under tempo, make sure that you stay at a speed where you can play it very accurately and where you're focused, and you can really focus on making all of those different finger movements as even as you can and as smooth as you can, because once you do speed it up, that's going to make a big difference and it will carry through. A very important technique for learning tough rep for me is transcribing things. That's, of course, essential for jazz musicians, and I think that it's also very, very applicable to classical music. I have learned loads and loads of concertos and solo pieces by ear, and I think it really, really gives you a command of the piece and an understanding of the piece, and an understanding of not just your part, but also what is happening around you, especially if it's something like a concerto, in a way that learning it from the part is almost incomparable. Creativity is something that should be essential to every artist, and I explore my creativity through jazz and improvisation. I love playing jazz, and in no way do I only play it to work on classical music, but it has made me a much, much, much better musician overall and a much better classical musician, especially playing something like Donna Lee, which is extremely challenging on the bassoon, that raises the bar of your technical capabilities extremely quickly. And it also gives you a much deeper sense of the harmony that's happening behind the music that you're playing, because when you're playing jazz, you ideally know exactly what the harmonies are when you're playing it. So make sure you find ways to explore your own creativity, and make sure that you check out some of these other practice tips videos. And now I'm going to close out with a chorus of Donna Lee.